Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, I've got my 5 takeaway series looking back on 2024 to prepare for 2025. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Let's go. So my first takeaway, Matthew Stafford was far better for real life than for fantasy in 2024. So if you only look at fantasy, Stafford really wasn't all that great, but we know that he took the Rams to the brink of beating the Eagles and was a solid player in 2024. In 16 games, he completed 65.8% of his passes, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 7.3 yards per attempt, and 235.1 passing yards a game. He rested in week 18, didn't add anything as a rusher as usual, but he delivered consistently all year despite Puka Nakua's injury and Cooper Kupp's injuries and struggles. However, Stafford averaged just 13.4 fantasy points per game, though, 27th among quarterbacks. He's been on the wrong side of touchdown regression 3 years in a row. He had just a 3.9% touchdown rate in 2024, one of the lowest of his career. And Kyren Williams had 14 rushing touchdowns, which seems like a lot. Now, I will say, and I'm recommending to hold Matthew Stafford in Superflex leagues, I will say I do not buy the Matthew Stafford trade rumors at all. I think a lot of this is coming from people who are thinking about fantasy football, where Matthew Stafford was not great. But again, it wasn't his fault. He was good yards per attempt. He was good as a real life quarterback, good in accuracy. The touchdown regression for 2 years in a row has gone to Kyren Williams, and that's unfortunate. But that doesn't mean that Matthew Stafford has been a bad quarterback. It just means the goal line touches have gone a different direction. Now, if you're competing in Dynasty, probably just hold him. You're not going to get what he's worth in a Superflex league in return. And yeah, I still think that he's going to get a contract extension from the Rams where it'll be probably 2 years of guarantees to run it back with their really excellent core. Now, second takeaway, the entire Dolphins backfield has questions for 2025. So there was the Stafford trade news kind of talking about it. The other big news was the Dolphins cut Raheem Mostert this week, which saved them around $3 million in 2025 cap space. And they had to do this because Mostert had been ineffective in 2024 and turned 33 this offseason. He regressed from 21 total touchdowns in 2023 to just 2 last year and went from 4.8 yards a carry to just 3.3. But I will say, Mostert's poor performance was not because Jaylen Wright was good. Wright was not good. In 15 games, he had 68 carries, 249 yards, 3.7 yards a carry, and 3 catches for 8 yards. Nothing as a receiver. Absolutely nothing. Was the clear RB3 on the depth chart behind Achane and Mostert. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think Wright showed enough to lock in the backup job for 2025. Achane, though, pretty good. 203 carries, 907 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4.5 yards carry, and 78 catches for 592 yards and 6 touchdowns. Completely different player in 2024 than in 2023. Stayed healthy the entire year and actually saw more receiving work, almost double in both catches and yards per game. However, the rushing volume only ticked up a little bit. The rushing efficiency that he had in 2023 that was magic didn't return. He was still by far the best running back on the Dolphins, and it wasn't close. But again, the magic of 2023 was not there. Now, to me, I see a lot of people saying, now Wright's going to break out. He's going to be this clear backup to Achane in 2025. And that's possible, but that's not guaranteed at all. Wright was only a 4th-round pick. He did nothing in his rookie year to lock down the backup job. In fact, he was bad. Not many people expected the Dolphins to draft him in the first place. So will Wright's rookie year prevent them from surprising us again? They have extra picks in the 4th and 5th round of the 2025 NFL draft. Running back class is extremely deep. I will tell you that if they take a running back in the 4th round, it will probably be a prospect I like better than Jaylen Wright, not worse. I'm not saying that Wright won't get a chance to compete for RB2. But I wouldn't value him as if he's the week 1 RB2 immediately because I think he's going to have to compete for that job. Now, I saw a deal, Jaylen Wright for the 204. Jaylen Wright wasn't worth the 204 last year. Why his value should have gone up, I have no idea. He did nothing as a rookie. He was terrible. His value should have gone down, not up. And then this next one, so Jaylen Wright for Cedric Tillman. I saw some from Cedric Tillman. Probably rather have him long-term than someone who might be a backup in Jaylen Wright. Questions about the Dolphins backfield. It's one to keep an eye on this off season. So next up, Chuba Hubbard, who I think we haven't talked about a while because he finished the season injured. But he took the next step in 2024 from his previous career. He'd had kind of a mix of things. In 2021 and 2023, he served as a starter, filling in for an injured CMC and then replacing Miles Sanders. But in both cases, he delivered a lot of empty volume, not efficiency. In 2022, he was a backup the whole year, but he delivered efficiency in a backup role. So he had some efficiency and some volume, but not both at the same time. In 2024, he had both at the same time. 250 carries, 1,195 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4.8 yards a carry, 43 catches, 171 yards and touchdown. Extremely efficient on the ground, despite the Panthers' really bad offense for most of the year. 12th in true yards per carry, 15 breakaway runs, 57 evaded tackles. Performed well in traditional rushing stats, despite the Panthers facing poor game scripts, not running the ball all that much compared to other teams, and just generally being bad. However, no efficiency through the air. I mean, 43 catches for 171 yards is awful. So the efficiency was only on the ground, but he was very efficient. He was one of the, top half starting rushers in the league. Now, because of this performance, he got a 4-year, $33.2 million extension with $12 million in full guarantees. It was signed before Jonathon Brooks tore his ACL again. Now, this contract guarantees that Hubbard is the starter for 2025. They're mostly committed to Hubbard for 2 seasons, and they can easily escape this deal after 2026. But we know that this deal really only guarantees 1 year of Chuba Hubbard. I will say, though, I don't want people to forget how good Chuba Hubbard was. It's not just a player eating up empty volume. Chuba Hubbard was legitimately a plus back in 2024. Now, unfortunately, Hubbard's good fortune has coincided with bad fortune for Brooks. And I know what you're saying. I can hear it. Brooks' value will never be lower. Why sell him now? Well, I don't think that's true, actually. Once we get in season and Brooks isn't playing, which is what's going to happen, his value is going to continue to drop, not rise. And if you can just get out now and get something that you can use to make other moves, I would do it. I would do it because I'm still seeing that the trade value of Brooks is, we'll look at it. 211 and 302. Okay, I mean, Brooks' value is probably around one of those picks. So I'd rather just have the 2 picks, take 2 other chances on something other than Brooks coming off the second ACL tear. And then this other one, Travis Etienne in a 27-second. Brooks and Etienne are probably in similar value, but the 27-second will continue to gain value over time. So I'd easily just move off of Brooks for this. Pretty much every deal that I saw selling Brooks, I was on the opposite side. So I wouldn't be acquiring any new shares. I'd be looking to move on. And it just, again, Hubbard's good fortune and strong play coincided with bad fortune for Brooks, and it just kind of sucks. But this is where we are. Got to adjust in Dynasty to new information. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. Right now, I'm offering a 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT. That's only advertised on the YouTube channel. You get my rankings, including newly posted rookie ranks, access to the Discord, all my premium write-ups, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month, $3 with discount, include all of that, plus options for direct message fantasy advice at higher levels. Now, if you want to know more about the Patreon, check out my Why You Should Join the Patreon videos on the channel. And I'll just say this, as always, please sign up for Patreon. I'm active in there all the time. It's where you can interact with me. Interactions with me will be for patrons only at this point. So, I'm doing a lot in the Patreon Discord. I'm going to continue doing a lot in the Patreon Discord. I'm there every day. But I've been pulling back from free content in favor of creating better and more premium content. And that will only increase over time. So if you want to get in now, now's a great time with my promotion. With that said, we'll move into my next takeaway. So next up, Jerry Jeudy took a huge step forward in 2024. And he really did. 90 catches, 1,229 yards, 4 touchdowns, 145 targets, 5.3 catches and 72.3 yards a game. He was a clear wide receiver 1 for the Browns after Amari Cooper was traded, but all of Jeudy's production came kind of after that trade and then when Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles. But targets are an earned stat, so this can't be a total mirage. But let's compare. With Watson, 3 catches, 38 yards, and 6 targets per game. Without Watson, 6.9 catches, 96.3 yards, and 10.3 targets a game. So that without Watson stat line would make him basically the best wide receiver in the league. The other stat line would be irrelevant. So it's obviously somewhere in between those things, right? The truth is in the middle. But he did continue to earn targets even when Jameis Winston wasn't the starter, even with Dorian Thompson-Robinson or other quarterbacks. Now, before this year, Jerry Jeudy was a fine player. 3.7 catches, 53.6 yards a game, 11 total touchdowns in 57 games. He'd been a productive receiver in his career. He'd been pacing for 63 catches, 911 yards across a 17-game season in his career, but never managed to be on the right side of touchdown regression, including this year. He was a nice real-life wide receiver. He had been a starter consistently since his rookie year. Probably a real-life wide receiver 2, fantasy wide receiver 4 type player. Consistently since his rookie year. He'd never been bad or totally irrelevant, but he never really broke out. He never really was a consistent fantasy starter outside of a few weeks here and there. So for those reasons, I would consider both sides of the Jerry Jeudy market. I think there are some people who are saying, okay, Jerry Jeudy's superstar now. And some who are saying, well, he's irrelevant because he was bad before this year. He turns 26 years old this offseason. So it's not like he broke out at 29 or 30. He was 25 this year during his breakout. It's a bit late, but you see wide receivers enter the NFL at 23, 24, and then break out in year 2 or 3. So a breakout at age 25 is not ridiculous or unheard of. We know Jeudy was a decent player, not a total bust prior to this year, like I said. I think the truth is closer to Jeudy's career average than the superstar. But if you just add a little bit to Jeudy's career average, he's a weekly fantasy play. So we're going to have to see. Now, Jeudy signed a 3-year, $52 million contract with the Browns through 2027. It's not wide receiver 1 money, but it's higher than teams would spend for a wide receiver 2. This is not wide receiver 2 money. So based on the guarantees, Jeudy will be on the Browns through 2026, barring a trade, which I don't see happening. Because the Browns are $30 million over the cap, they can reduce that a bit with some restructures. The Myles Garrett trade is only going to cost them cap money, so that's not going to help. But they're not going to be able to bring in a free agent wide receiver of consequence. Elijah Moore is going to walk in free agency, so they're going to have Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and probably either a day 3 or day 2 pick, maybe a cheap free agent as wide receiver 3. So I did see a couple deals. This one I thought was interesting. You combine Jerry Jeudy and DJ Moore, kind of, we know mostly what they are, for Marvin Harrison Jr., a player I'd like a lot more. You get out from Jerry Jeudy. Most of the trades, though, for Jerry Jeudy were actually the other way. Buying Jerry Jeudy. One that I saw that I liked, buy Jerry Jeudy for Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, I call him Boring Robinson. I'm just not that interested in him. I think you're more likely to get a spark to your fantasy team out of Jerry Jeudy than you are from Brian Robinson. So I would take Jerry Jeudy here. Now, I just want to talk about Darnell Mooney, who emerged as the Falcons' clear second target last year. And he signed a 3-year, $39 million contract in 2024 free agency to join the Falcons. At the time, he went under the radar. It's probably one of my best calls of the 2024 offseason. I was talking about him as a sleeper, and he quickly overtook Kyle Pitts as the second target on the Falcons. In 16 games, 64 catches, 992 yards, 5 touchdowns, 106 targets, 4 catches, and 62 yards a game. Pretty much returned right to his 2021 form. Sat out the final game of the year with an injury, struggled a bit during Cousins' waning performances, but he consistently outproduced Pitts, and it was Mooney, not Pitts, who had the secondary breakout alongside the big breakout of Drake London. So what would I do? I'm actually kind of interested in buying Darnell Mooney. It's a rare non-elite player that I'm interested in buying even at this time of year where I'm usually not buying players. He's under contract for 2 more years with the Falcons, just 27 years old, turns 28 in season. The Falcons only have 4 draft picks in the 2025 NFL draft. I don't see them drafting a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. Their defense is where they need to spend and maybe on the offensive line. Mooney will almost certainly be the wide receiver 2 again in 2025. And I saw some crazy deals. Buy Mooney for a 26th third. I mean, what are you going to do with 26th third? It doesn't make any sense. And then buy Darnell Mooney for Kyle Pitts. It wasn't even a tight end premium. I mean, Kyle Pitts is a bust. Kyle Pitts is awful. I don't get it. I would much rather have Darnell Mooney. He was fantasy viable all year, whereas Kyle Pitts was fantasy viable none of the year. So it's a pretty easy move for me to look at buying Darnell Mooney. Maybe I'll cover it more on another episode, honestly, because there were multiple trades where I was interested in Darnell Mooney. But with that being said, we'll move into my next segment. So this kind of came in right as I was about to start recording. So otherwise it would have been one of the takeaways. But T. Higgins will be franchise tagged by the Bengals. Franchise tag will cost $26 million. It's the second tag. The price goes up about 20% for a second tag over the previous tag. It's a heavy cap hit. I honestly don't believe that Higgins will play on the tag. I think he will either sign a long-term contract with the Bengals or be traded to another team. A tag and trade has happened before, notably with Jarvis Landry to the Browns. But this $26 million cap hit would be really, really high for Higgins. They need that money, and an extension would significantly lower the cap hit. So again, I think extension or trade are the most likely outcomes, not playing on the tag number. Possible teams for Higgins trade include the Commanders and the Patriots. Those two teams have the most cap space and the need a wide receiver. And I kind of get why they tagged him. I mean, letting him walk in free agency for nothing, or at a minimum, you'll be able to get a second-round pick. They have rookie quarterbacks, these two teams, under 4 more years of team control at non-quarterback prices. They're the instant destinations that come to the top of my head. But if I had to choose, I would bet on a long-term extension over a trade. It's just they can negotiate with him on an extension all the way up until July 15th. I do think that they want to get something done this time. And I do think this is resolved sooner rather than later. I think if they trade him, the trade compensation will be in the 2025 draft so they can draft a replacement, not drawn out into the summer. So if the NFL draft comes and goes and there's no trade, expect an extension to occur at that time. Now, I'm going to move into some Patreon questions. So, do you see a scenario in which Mason Taylor will be the 3rd ranked tight end in fantasy drafts ahead of Fannin and Arroyo? For me, nothing can really displace Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland at tight end 1 and tight end 2. Fannin, Arroyo, and Taylor are the main 3 competitors for tight end 3. It's possible Taylor ends up there, but I'd need to see some higher draft capital. I mean, Fannin has college production that Taylor doesn't have. So, yeah, I mean, higher draft capital would be the big thing that helps. There's a scenario, but that's not how I have it ranked right now. I have Taylor at 5. Okay. How do you balance the risk of taking on young players with high upside versus established players with steady production? Well, I wish there was a short answer for this. And even if it were, this is more of a behind the paywall question. But I'll just say this. It's subjective. And every player has risk. Aging risk is another type of risk, right? So, yeah, it's kind of how I would value it. And remember, the risk of aging out and holding the bag is probably the biggest risk of all. So, yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer or anything. Now, I like this question. In my league, we have managers pay league dues whenever they trade away their future first in order to reassure their commitment to the league or at least leave the new owner free of dues. What are your thoughts on this? And what other rules have you seen to help increase the longevity of the league? So I kind of agree. For me, I like requiring league dues to be paid when trading any future first. I do think it's a little excessive to require it for like a future 4th, chasing down a payment for a future 4th to make that trade go through. I think it's too much. I also don't think it's necessary to require it to trade a future first previously acquired. So like, let's say you trade for someone else's first and then traded that again. I would not require it for that. Only for your own firsts in all years. If you trade your own first for a future year, you should pay for that year. The other rule I've seen is to have everyone pay a year ahead at all times. So in order to start making moves in 2025, you'd have to pay for 2026. That is pretty extreme, but that definitely keeps the league going. Then you always, when someone leaves, you always have a free year to give the new manager. But again, that is extreme. I don't see that very often. But I could see why you might want to do that in high buy-in leagues or, you know, other types of leagues. But yeah, that's the most extreme version, is paying a year ahead. Now, if you like the video, make sure to support the channel by subscribing. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty content year round. There's 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT. Click on the link right there, patreon.com/fantasyadvice to get that now. Every sign up helps support my independent content, chiefly the YouTube. And yeah, once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.